So, a day after the big Chaos Dwarfs news drop, they apparently released another big video, which apparently contains some meaty information from what little tidbits I saw on a couple Discords I'm on. Wasn't expecting this. I stayed up pretty late last night, in large part because I got sick off of bad pizza, and I intended for today to be a household cleaning day. Nonetheless, I'm recording this real quick just in case there's anything interesting in this video that I want to talk about. So, let's go, I guess. Chaos Dwarfs versus Black Orcs, that's kind of what I was expecting the trailer to be. The blunderbusses look good. I was kind of expecting them to almost look a little bit... The blunderbusses the Chaos Dwarfs had access to on the tabletop had this very goofy, wide-opened mouth. And I'm sure that was realistic to some real-life blunderbusses, but I thought it was a bit too much. So I'm glad to see they're a little more subtle here. Very Call of Duty camera perspective there. I'm going to assume that is a Call of Duty reference. I wouldn't know, though. Call of Duty player. Bits and pieces. Played Black Ops, I guess. Okay. And that's what the Chaos Dwarfs think of their allies that fall over.
Astragoth. No, he's not a spacefaring metalhead, he's a mecha-wearing, magic-wielding, limb-petrified High Priest of Hashut, and he's on a mission to prove his best sorcering days aren't yet behind him. Chaos Dwarf.
That? I can see where that's a pronunciation that might stick, but I've always called him Hashut. I guess it could just stay Hashut.
What a lovely pair of words. You'll be pleased to know our angry little Chaos friends have a nice variety of ranged, melee, cavalry, and artillery units, as well as enough cannon fodder to make the greenest of Skavens salivate.
What am I? Oh, I'm at the highest resolution.
Orc and Goblin laborers offering...
Oh, wow, yeah, these are some... Get a load of these work-in-progress unit cards, huh? That's actually really funny. They just went ahead and uploaded a video with the work-in-progress unit cards in there. I kind of respect that. With that said, that's going to make a lot of people on Reddit and what have you very, very mad, because they're going to think those are the final unit. They're going to look like oats. Oats. Whatever. Okay, let's see. Goblin laborers. I've noticed they're using the word laborer instead of slave. I don't know. I assume that's not, like, supposed to be a thing of... That might be a censorship thing. But given that Dark Elf slave mechanics exist, I'm going to guess it's not. It's probably there to try and... What I was seeing the modders talk about was that they were thinking they were calling it the slavery mechanic instead of the labor mechanic instead of the slavery mechanic, just for the sake of when they talk about making modifications to the slavery mechanic, that inherently means they're changing the way it works for the Dark Elves. While when they're changing the labor mechanic, they're changing the way it works for the Chaos Dwarfs. Bit odd, but I guess there's a logical reason why. And these goblin laborers have terrible stats. Good thing they're going to be cheap, I suppose. And what is this? This isn't ultra unit size, is it? I use large unit size. So, I'm not sure what these unit scales are. Because I could have swore... on large size, I think there's only... 75 units of Dwarf Warriors to a unit, but I could be wrong. It would be unusual for Chaos Dwarfs to have more entities to a unit, but we'll see.
An inexpensive front...
Oh, we've also got a Bull Centaur hero right there. So, I think that pretty well confirms we got the three... We're going to be skipping over Hobgoblin Khans, maybe? I don't know, it'd be really weird if they actually got all 4 heroes this time, because Crave Assembly rarely includes all of the heroes for a given race. They usually skip out on one.
Line that can be used to distract your enemy's army and control the flow of the battlefield. We'll use them in our approach to soak up arrows and conceal the units we actually care about. Meanwhile, Astragoth and our centaur boys are gonna loop around the back and harass their archers. Yep,
Wait, hang
you
on.
heard
Let's
that
go
right.
backwards. Just
Gonna loop around the back.
Astragoth has 60 speed. Really? I guess that makes sense. He's got that mech suit with big legs. Let's see. Other stats I missed.
Offer an inexpensive front line that
What are the stats on the Orc
can even
Laborer?
salivate.
They look like
Orc
they've
and
got
Goblin
armor piercing.
laborers
It's
offer
going to be
an
so weird if they do.
inexpensive.
Whoops. Ah, thank you, YouTube. Double-click functionality. Definitely not. Okay, Orc Laborers are armor piercing. That is strange. An armor piercing chaff unit. Then again, I guess they're Skaven slave spears and specialize their chaff with other races. Considerably less terrible stats, but still bad. 18 charge bonus ain't bad, though.
Front line that can be used to distract your enemy's army and control the flow of the battlefield.
Laborers,
Well,
Chaos Dwarf Warriors, great weapons. 30 melee attack. Oh, I forget. Is that standard for Dwarf Warriors with great weapons? Oh, that seems like that's really high for a unit of Dwarf Warriors. Oh, Chaos Dwarfs also get fire resist and some kind of unique racial passive ability. Interesting, okay.
use them in our approach to soak up arrows and conceal the unit.
Hang on, let's go back just a little bit. I know this is small stuff, but I'm curious about it anyways.
We'll use them in our approach to soak up arrows.
Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses. Armored and shielded, armor piercing, decent melee. Those are solid melee. Wow. Yeah, that's a... And they have silver... Wait a second. Oh, are they changing the shield icons to have an arrow sticking out of it? That is clearer for new players, because I remember when I was a new player, I was confused about the point of... And, you know, it was a big change, a big help once I understood, oh, shields are supposed to block missiles. But it looks like they have silver shields, which mainline dwarfs don't. They also have suppressive fire on their... So they would be good to combo with other missile units. Combo your blunderbusses with hobgoblin archers, maybe? I'm shocked they have such good melee stats. That's a... They're not quite... They look like they're about level with Dwarf Warriors, though they have 20 less instances per unit. So you can't just throw them around in melee freely. You aren't, you know, Kislev, where Kislev kind of doesn't really care if their missile units get into melee at all. But that is definitely more melee security than I was expecting.
Conceal the units we actually care about. Meanwhile, Astragoth and our centaur boys are gonna loop around the back and harass their archers.
Yeah, those are some solid stats for a lord.
Yep, you heard that right. Astragoth's legs are as swift as they are utterly terrifying. We've sent our blunderbusses to flank the bulk of the orcs, and the result is a similar consistency to mushy peas.
Hang on, what are the Bull Centaur stats? These ones are... Looks like dual weapons. They don't have anti-large or anti-infantry. That's interesting. Generalist. These look like typical Monsters Cavalry stats. I would not compare the Monsters Cavalry stats too much, though, so these guys might be weaker or stronger compared to, say, Demogryphs. Bear Riders. Got Ward save, but that seems like a campaign. I don't see why they would have... Oh, these guys do have shields. Okay, these are probably just going to be standard Bull Centaurs with hand weapons and shields, though. Okay, because I've heard there are also Bull Centaurs with dual weapons and Bull Centaurs with great weapons when you go back and pay attention to the cinematic trailer. I wasn't paying attention to that, and I probably should have. Actually, I might have noticed it. Either which way, that seems like kind of a setup similar to the way Minotaurs work. Beastmen. We can get shielded Minotaurs who have a little more defense, missile defense, and more kind of a generalist purpose, versus dual weapon Minotaurs who are very distinctly an anti-infantry unit, and great weapon Minotaurs who are very distinctly a anti-large unit. So probably the dual weapon and great weapon Bull Centaur renders will be devoted to going after specific targets. I am really curious what this Chaos Dwarf passive ability.
All that's left now is for Ironhand to do his thing.
He looks great. He looks funny. That shot of the Chaos Dwarf blunderbuss is just shooting down that Orc Lord. He dead.
Despite putting some greenskins in their place, Astragoth is a far cry from his former glory. A fact he'll need.
Okay, so the Chaos Dwarf spread undivided corruption. I know there are a lot of people that are really into the idea of Chaos Dwarf spreading a special pollution kind of corruption. I personally wasn't so big on that. Zarnagrund is horribly polluted, but the rest of the Darklands aren't so much. There's stretches that are polluted by volcanic ash instead of industrial waste, but in terms of pollution from industrial waste, I think that's really just supposed to be Zar.
To overcome as he consolidates the orc-infested province of Zorn as Khul to reclaim his rightful place in the Tower of Zard. But proving he's the one true leader of the Conclave isn't old Ironhand's only goal. Oh no. A way into the domain of Hashat has shown itself, and, once breached, the Chaos Dwarfs can reap the most potent power known to Demon Dowie.
Okay, this is Realm of Chaos stuff.
The blood of Hashat. To get there, Astragoth will need to build a drill. A very...
So, I do believe a lot of people said that the Champions of Chaos campaigns around with Chaos were great. So, I suppose for some people this is going to be really fun. It's just, for me, the Realm of Chaos map is so thoroughly constructed. I had a lot of time wrapping my head around it when I had to play it, to play Warhammer 3 races. Now that I don't have to put up with it, I don't want.
Very big drill, which we can upgrade into level 2 and level 4 at the cost of a hefty sum of raw materials, which means we'll need a strong economy.
As a strong landmark. 500 income at tier 1? Wow.
We'll return to the Great Drill of Hashat in a little bit, but for now, what better way to amass great wealth than with great violence?
Okay. Astragoth does not start out in Zarnagrund, apparently. He starts out in Uzgula. Which makes me think that none of the Chaos Dwarfs start out in control of Zarnagrund. Which makes sense, because Zarnagrund is going to be the most powerful settlement, and also the one you're supposed to fight for politically with the Tower of Zar mechanic. It reminds me of... I guess it reminds me of how with Cathay, none of the Legendary Lords start out with control of Wei Jin. And it's kind of the opposite of how with the Wood Elves, any Legendary Lord you play out of the Wood Elves starts out with control of the Oak of Ages, regardless of how far they are from it.
We're weakened, we're outnumbered, and we're on the offensive. Thankfully, the lore of Hashat with its many fiery boons comes in clutch. Burning Wrath is our bread and butter in Astragoth's early campaign. Good damage, good range, good vibes. Who doesn't like swirling death lava?
Hang on. Take a look at that spell description.
Early campaign. Its many fiery
A magic missile that spawns a vortex. Really? Fascinating. That's interesting. Okay, Lore of Hashat sounds...
boons comes in clutch. Burning Wrath is our bread and butter in Astragoth's early campaign. Good damage, good range, good vibes. Who doesn't like swirling death lava?
Full Centaur renders.
Ah, to the victor go the spoils. Another hard one.
Okay, so that's drill parts, I'm going to guess. What that is. And there you go. Trust you to expect. Wow, those goblin laborers got a lot of kills.
One piece of the puzzle. Unlike every other faction in the world, Chaos Dwarfs know the value of hard work, the worth of a sweat.
Hang on.
Unlike every other...
Okay. So the Chaos Dwarfs have a similar thing to the Demon Prince, where they have different kinds of settlement they can... Okay, so there's the outpost and the factory. Interesting. What's the difference? I'm going to assume outposts produce laborers, while factories consume laborers, but produce money. And you can sack it to steal more of these drill parts. I assume these aren't drill parts. These look like a special resource that you could get that activates some kind of racial... The drill is right there. Okay. Shouldn't have said that. Raising you can do for raw resources. Interesting. The Chaos Dwarfs just burn the city down and take the ashes and turn them into something else. They do that.
faction in the world, Chaos Dwarfs know the value of hard work, the worth of a sweaty brow and calloused palms. That's why Chaos Dwarfs don't build any old settlements, no.
Okay, so that's why the orc laborers are armor-piercing. Because they are bringing to war mining tools. That makes sense. I was curious last time when we saw the orc laborers, or I'm just gonna... Okay, that's what they are. Chaos Dwarfs may like to call them unpaid interns, but they're slaves. So, when we saw the orc slave unit in the cinematic trailer, I was confused by why they got access to great weapons, because orc boys in the actual greenskin army don't get access to great weapons. But it makes sense if it's just them bringing to war mining tools. Chaos Dwarfs anyways, especially because the Chaos Dwarfs aren't going to pay to arm them anyway.
Outposts, factories, and towers, all tools of the unrelenting machine of industry.
Darnagran looks amazing on the...
Outposts are needed to mine raw materials, factories turn those raw materials into ornaments and gold, and towers are our sprawling province capitals. But what do we build?
Okay, so... pull that down.
Industry. Outposts are needed to mine raw...
So outposts, you get raw resources. Factories turn raw resources into the actual goods you sell to the other evil faction races via convoy. And then each of the actual province capitals don't have to... you could only miner settlements are either mines or factories. But major settlements are towns. Okay, so it's not the Wood Elf outpost system like I thought when I saw the blog yesterday. Okay. So, okay, outpost. That's a couple of units confirmed. Hobgoblin Cutthroats and Hobgoblin Archers. Okay. Owning an outpost increases your conclave influence, a little bit of money, and Chaos Undivided Corruption.
materials.
And there is a button right there to convert your outposts into factories. Interesting. I wonder if it's entirely different building tree.
Factories turn those raw materials.
Okay. So a factory, just from the outset, has a different set of garrison. They trade out the Hobgoblin Cutthroats for blunderbusses, Chaos Dwarf blunderbusses. And they get walls. Okay.
Into ornaments and gold, and
or no, they don't get walls. They get they from the get-go are minor settlement battles. Okay, I'd like to see more of those. They need to just change the way those. They need to just change some of the mechanics of the minor settlement battles to make them more fun, rather than just try to get rid of them. And yeah, major settlements, you get the standard buildings effect from races. That makes sense.
Are our sprawling province capitals. But what do we build? Well, there's a lot of factors to take into consideration, and before we get there, let's rewind a little bit and take a deeper look at our economy. That's right, hold on to your seatbelt, I said economy. Chaos Dwarfs are industrious little fellas, and that's reflected in the way we'll manage our budding empire's resources. Behold, our new major currencies. Treasury, raw materials, ornaments, and labor. And then there's conclave influence, but we'll come back to that later.
Okay, so that's what those resources are. Because I was wondering what that little bullhead, Hashut head resource represents. It's conclave influence. And those are not drill parts. I was entirely off the mark on that. Those are laborers. Okay, that makes sense. I probably should have figured, because that does look vaguely like a set of manacles, shackles. Proper word.
Treasury needs no explanation. It's shiny, it's heavy, we love it. Raw materials does what it says on the tin, needed for certain buildings and technologies, and can be converted into ornaments or gold in specific factory buildings. Our primary source of raw materials is from outpost strip mines, but we can also trade...
Okay, so raw resources can either be turned into armaments or gold. I was wondering, are the Chaos Dwarfs going to be reliant on having other races to trade with? Or will they be able to do a paint the map world domination run without hobbling them?
with it
Okay, they got one building that increases post-battle loot and income.
using military
One that increases raw materials, but also increases the workload.
convoys, which unlock at turn 5. Armaments, primarily gained through factory assembly lines, armaments are used in the construction of advanced military buildings and some technologies. As with raw materials, we can trade armaments on military convoy expeditions for other goods. Labor, because all those tasty minerals aren't going to mine themselves.
Okay, so it is similar to the Dark Elves, where it's got turned from more labor equals more good, just get more money, to these are certain minimums you need to meet or else your buildings won't function properly. I do prefer that.
Labour directly affects the output of our raw materials. More strip mines requires more labour, and a dwindling workforce produces fewer raw materials. So keeping your control in check is advised. We can perform various actions with our labour force, increasing our gold stores or our conclave influence, or we can move labour around our sprawling empire to bolster provinces that might need the extra manpower. You may have guessed it, labourers are largely unpaid,
So that's like the Dark Elves.
gained from winning battles, and are usually greenskins. So, what to build? We've established that labour is important and its effectiveness is directly linked to a province's control. We need labour to mine raw materials, and those raw materials to produce armaments and other goods. I've got an idea, and feel free to disagree with me, that's fine, but I envision a Chaos Dwarf empire with districts. Here, in my homeland, I see the heart of my mining endeavours, free outposts and, keeping all those labourers in line, a tall, terrible tower. Yeah, let's do that. Our next province will be entirely factories, and that'll be our industrial district. Factories are too important to sleep on though, so we'll build a mixture for now and utilise the swap settlement feature when it's district time. One of the handiest uses for labour is instant construction. For example, we can kickstart our economy by throwing
Really? Spend slaves to... Huh. That is interesting. Yeah, that could be really strong, because sometimes construction time can be a real pain. This will probably give the Chaos Dwarfs a better capacity to occupy lands that they don't have the appropriate habitability. Because that is a big part of the habitability. That's a difficult word to say. Habitability mechanic is the construction time. Public order debuff and the money debuff and the growth debuff are all bad, but when you try to occupy lands that are not habitable for you, especially like, if you ever played Bretonnia and tried to occupy Athel-Loren, or when you play Zhao Ming and you try to take the Haunted Forest off of Gorst, you find that building construction time gets to absurd levels, where it's 12 turns to build a single building. And when you get to that stage, you're kind of like, ooh, I might be done with the campaign by the time this building finishes.
labourers at it, instantly building a money pit to get those coffers flowing. Over in the tower, we'll want to work towards upgrading to rank 2 at the hefty cost of raw materials. An upgraded tower will give us access to the
Raw materials to upgrade main settlement buildings. They might just be for major settlements.
lava fields, where we can churn out more centaurs and the great Taurus, amongst other handy benefits.
Great Taurus is only tier 2? Bull Centaurs are only tier 2? Some of their artillery pieces are only tier 2? Ooh. Okay, so we do have feral Great Tauruses, feral Lamassus, and feral Bale Tauruses. Bull Centaur renders with shields. Bull Centaurs dual wielding. Bull Centaurs great weapons. Let's see. It's difficult to see it. I guess they just haven't rendered 4K yet. Okay, so the Earthshaker Mortar, there are 3 of, and they are tier 5, so the strongest artillery. I'm going to guess this is the Doom Rocket and Hell Cannon. Hell Cannon at tier 3 is crazy. Hell Cannon at tier 3 is nuts. And then from the rest of these, I'm going to guess Flame Cannon, Dread, or not Dread, Demon Engine, I don't think it's called a Demon Engine, but I'll call it that. And the Skullcracker. Okay. And the Kadai Fireborn are tier 3. That makes sense. They're trying to distribute monsters a lot earlier in the game now. You can get access to Ushabti at like tier 2. I'm not much of a tomb.
More ranks eventually leads to the Lanisu,
Armaments.
Renders, and the dreaded Bell Taurus. But
Armaments are built to build your are used to build your military building. That makes sense.
take time and some serious resources. Before we move on, it's a good idea to get some technology brewing. For Chaos Dwarfs, the technology tree is split into 3 branches: military, sorcery, and industry. No points for guessing which one does what, although our sorcery tree is also where we'll...
Ooh. That's a big tech tree. Oh, that is interesting, though. I can't wait to see what the modders can do with this. There's some serious possibilities there.
Find our diplomatic boons. No wrong answers here. We can cater our society to fit very specific molds. Military powerhouse or economic marvel. The choice is ours. And we're going to choose a nice mixed spread. We'll start with Merchants Guild for the bonus to trade, and then we'll work towards envoys.
There's going to be a lot of lore to find in this tech tree. Because there is a lot of Chaos Dwarf stuff we don't know how it works. But just for instance, Merchant Guild right there. I don't think there's ever references to the Chaos Dwarf still having guilds. You know, they leave it ambiguous how much of the old Karazankor way of running things Chaos Dwarfs still do. But the existence of guilds is, yeah, that's already immediately a big change. Or, let's see, what else is it? Industrial Revolution.
The conclave in the sorcery tree.
Pandemic preparations. Yeah, because you're going to be... Yeah, in Immortal Empires, you're going to be setting up next to Kugath. So he's going to be plaguing you like mad. Oh, that's smart to put that there early. Ooh.
Which will get us on good standing with our fellow Chaos Dwarfs. It'll be a while until we need to worry about unlocking technologies with specific resources, so let's just push that out of our heads for now. And whilst we're pushing that out of our heads, let's push some new skills into Astragoths. Root Marcher, that's a given, and we'll drop points into Aspiring Presence now and Feather and Fodder.
Okay. Okay, that's a big benefit right there. Following units will receive bonuses from the skill. That's good to see. Also, you can tell different parts of this video were recorded at different points in development. Because in this first battle with Astragoth, the unit card for the Orc Laborers, the clear work in progress, just an Orc's head. Here it's got an actual painted unit card. Okay, I am surprised that they've went ahead and built the Chaos Dwarfs to have specific buffs for specific units. I thought Crib Assembly said they wanted to make it where you would just get buffs to, let's say, this tree buffs melee infantry, this tree buffs ranged infantry. And they were trying to do that to try and make allied unit mechanic more beneficial, more rewarding. But I don't really mind either which way.
Later, I'm going to be playing quite cannon fodder heavy, and it's nice if your meat shields don't run away. At level 12, Astragoth can unlock this lovely little joy.
A lot of diplomatic relations bonus.
Master of the Conclave. Being quite so angry, expansive, and...
Okay, so the Chaos Dwarf Lord type, I guess this is, has a gun. Has a little pistol. I want to say a surprise. There's definitely been art before of Chaos Dwarfs holding pistols. I don't know if that was ever an option they could take on tabletop. I could be wrong about that, though. I've never really investigated the Chaos Dwarf tabletop army lists with much dedication.
Repugnant, the Chaos Dwarfs get a fairly bad rap abroad. Anything we can do to soften that image will be handy in the long run. With our dashing Bull Centaur hero, we'll prioritise training where possible, and then just make him a right good stabber of living things, I reckon. What a beautiful bull man. What's his name? Zorak. I think not. Welcome to the party, Natalie. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Whew, almost done with turn 1, my word. We'll just recruit some sneaky...
Yeah, look at the change immediately. Like, in the skill tree footage, actual painted Orc Laborer art. Here, Okay, Hobgoblin Sneaky Gits and Hobgoblin Cutthroats are different units. That is a surprise. Also, Chaos Dwarf units have a unit cap on them. That was a fairly common speculation before they were announced. So you have to build military buildings to counter the Chaos Dwarf's horrible underpopulation. That probably also is a way of dealing with the Chaos Dwarfs. Probably are going to have a really, really good economy. So limiting every unit they have that isn't their low-tier greenskin borrowed units is an interesting...
Gobbos, another unit of Chaos Dwarf warriors, and some more cannon fodder, labourers, then it's all aboard the Chaos Dwarf Express to Murderville. Choo-choo. Dang, greenskins are holed up on some prime real estate. We'll spread our attackers, as is only correct and proper, to assault on 4 fronts.
Hang on, let's go back and see, are there any
Dang,
unit cards there I
greenskins are
really
hard
want
up
to
on
take a
some
look.
prime real estate. We'll spread our attackers, as is only correct and proper, to
Chaos Dwarf Warriors. Those look like standard Dwarf Warrior stats. They look the same, except for the passive ability.
assault on 4 fronts. I know, full frontal charges with cavalry are frowned upon, but I can take them. Especially with a little help from the laws of a shut and fire.
Interesting that Astragoth doesn't start with any artillery unit.
Oh, lava stomp. You love to see it. As predicted, Astragoth, Natali, and their centaur children made light work of their orcish opponents. Elsewhere, we're making slow but steady progress into the din, and I can only imagine the furious indignation of the soon-to-be indentured locals.
I like how even on Crev Assembly's own
With
PCs,
one
they get a
entrance
little bit of
breach,
lag
we're
with some
free
of
to
this.
sow chaotic seas with our cavalry.
Bit of drop frames.
Oh, mecha body slam.
I'm still really glad they went for
Zorna's Call
the
is once again united, and Astragoth's quest to re-establish
old school
his dominance
Astragoth.
within the Tower of Zar can begin in earnest. We'll set the billowing smokestacks commandment to maintain control over our labour and contemplate where to forge ahead next. Remember, we'll be looking for a nice, nearby province to build our factories. The path to the east is tempting and opens us up to the Mountains of Morn, though the ogres are not a force to be taken lightly. Either way, the Saberskins are less than friendly. War will sing in the mountains eventually. Tantalizingly close, the High Pass is our most obvious choice, and though these crumbling ruins may appear abandoned, they hum with the scratching machinations of Skaven.
So if you're encouraged to play nice with the other Chaos Dwarfs as much as possible, then you really want to expand out of the Darklands so that you aren't competing with the other Chaos Dwarfs for territory. So that you're not feuding with them on your borders. Which could be interesting for making the Chaos Dwarf campaign actually a bit easier than I was expecting. I was expecting the Chaos Dwarf campaign to be a bit difficult, especially for Astragoth starting out up north, because you start out next to Grimgor, and Grimgor is such a strong legendary lord. But if you're able to get the support and security of safe borders, then Grimgor would probably be a lot more manageable.
Though is not as immediate a threat, the vampires and the orcs of the World Edge Mountain hold no love for us and would stand fast in the face of our expansive ambitions. But not all our neighbours want us dead, and indeed our fellow Chaos Dwarfs also call these lands home. We would be wise to foster a strong relationship with our kind, for in a world that hates our very existence, they are our truest hope for an ally. You know what? Let's just stomp on some rats.
Darklands. They're really proud of that spell effect, huh? Hang on, let's go back just a second. I want to see what resources used to upgrade. Money is spent to upgrade outposts. I wonder if money is also used to upgrade for factories. Because that is interesting. You spend resources, you spend the raw resources and armaments to upgrade your main settlement build. So the Chaos Dwarf scheme is built around a network of weak minor settlements that are then built to upgrade and create your super strong major settlement. That is a really interesting idea. The question becomes, though, how overextended can you get with your minor settlements? You want to maintain a balance so you don't have too many major settlements that are underdeveloped and thus not really worth holding, At the same time, you don't want to have this vast network of weak minor settlements you can't actually, because that does get to be a problem in several campaigns in Total War Warhammer, especially right now. The AI, the anti-player bias right now in Warhammer 3 seems to be at its strongest yet. I have a lot of mods that I use to counter that, because I just don't enjoy it. But for people who play vanilla, having settlements that don't have very beefy garrisons feels like you are just bound to lose. That you are going to be declared war. You're going to have war declared on you from all sides. I just have to commit to wiping out an enemy on one given side. So, that is the thing with the Chaos Dwarfs being very reliant on both major settlements and minor settlements, is you run the risk not only, like I said, of underdeveloping your major settlements, thus making them weaker than they should be, but also getting too big of a network of minor settlements that you don't have enough armies to hold, especially because as Chaos Dwarfs you have such limited access to anything green skin. All the buffs there. Oh look, don't even bother building a battering ram. Ram Assembly has to look at the battering ram and wonder why they made it, right? It's so bizarre. Like, there's no reason for it to exist. Just running an infantry unit up to the gate is so much better. I like how even the Chaos Dwarf siege towers are big machines. What the? Hang on. Astragoth does a fighting game combo to the Skaven. Okay. So major settlements you can choose to not make into a tower. And it looks like you can spend labor to upgrade the starting tier of the tower. Interesting. But when you're expanding into the Mountains of Morn, you don't want to really build that many more towers since you can't get walls when you're in Ornath or Loren for that. That is interesting. Okay. Underway. Okay. I was wondering if the Chaos Dwarfs would keep that. Astragoth looks a little goofy running on the main. I'm not gonna lie.
Classic ogres. Couldn't wait their turn. No matter what direction we started in, we're always going to end up in a situation like this. At least our tower will act as a barrier between the ogres and the rest of our settlements. It's got a strong garrison, so we should be alright for now. If things start looking hairy, we can recruit an emergency lord and hope for the best. Impulsive. That's what I like my leaders to be.
Okay, so they are not called Chaos Dwarf Lords, they are called Overseers. Makes sense. That is a lot more characterful than Chaos Dwarf. So we've got Lore of Hashut, Lore of Shadows, Lore of Metal, and Lore of Fire. Those all make sense. Those are pretty well the three integral elements of Chaos Dwarf life.
Anyway, we've only gone and collected a fair few influence points. Let's say we crack open the Tower of Zar and see what's inside. Okay, alright, I see how it is. 2 seats already taken.
So these are seats. Okay. So... So these are seats. And this seat... Okay, so there's an influence cost to take the seat, and there's a higher influence cost to usurp the seat from somebody else. And each of them come with very big buffs. Plus 25% income from settlement building is... But there's still these district buffs up here. So, once all of the seats are filled, maybe it applies the district buffs to all of the Chaos Dwarf faction? Interesting. Okay, and this faction is Warhost of Zar. That is Zoltan's faction. I believe I guessed that correctly. That's Zoltan's faction. That's Greyzoth's faction. Okay.
I guess that's what I get for savoring my rat stomp.
While this seat, plus 100 raw materials per turn, plus 5% raw materials output. That also sounds really good.
Anyway, much like the Chaos Dwarfs technology pillars, the Tower of Zara is split into industry, military, and sorcery. There are 4 tiers, 3 districts, and a whole lot of boons to gobble down, with the ultimate prize being the confederation
Ooh.
of our fellow Chaos Dwarfs.
Okay, let's go back a second. So this is the Chaos Dwarf Confederation mechanic. Makes sense, because the DLC team for Total War Warhammer likes having Confederation.
A lot of boons to gobble down, with the ultimate prize
Legion of Asgore, okay, that's Dre's Oath.
being the confederation of our fellow Chaos Dwarfs.
And those will be the guys who are occupying Zarnagrund. Okay, that makes sense.
To unlock the next tier,
those will be the Celestial Loyalists, if you compare them to Cathay.
2 full districts must
Chaos, Undivided, Corruption, and Adjacent Provinces. Global Recruitment Capacity +2, that's nice. Maximum number of active convoys +1. Ooh. That is interesting, because with Cathay, when you play Cathay, you always get the feeling of, yeah, but what if I could run 2 trade caravans?
be completed in the previous tier. Thanks to my like-minded kin, we're well on our way to achieving those ends. Not gonna lie, I did want the prize.
Hang on, let's go back just a bit. I want to see, did they pass over the tier 3 buff?
I guess that's what I get for savoring my rat stomping. Anyway, much like the Chaos Dwarfs technology pillars, the Tower of Zara is split into industry, military, and sorcery. There are 4 tiers, 3 districts.
Sorcery District, -10% wins of magic cost for all spells, that's good. -1 global recruitment duration, that's great. Whole +3 all provinces, solid.
Districts and a whole lot of minded kin, we're well on our way to achieving those ends. Not gonna lie, I did want the Machinator seat for the bonus to raw materials. We could dethrone them, we have the influence to do so, but we're still trying to play nice at the moment, so probably not the best.
Okay, does it make the other Chaos Dwarf, does it reduce diplomatic relations with other Chaos Dwarfs? Take seats from. Backwards a bit. What was that?
We have the influence to do so, but we're still trying to play.
Grants random weapon or armor ancillary every 3 turns. That sounds nice.
Nice at the moment, so probably not.
Campaign movement range +15% after winning a battle. Okay, so the Chaos Dwarfs seem like more than any. This seems OP. This seems like once you get to the top of the tower and start confederating the other Chaos Dwarf factions, this seems like you will just have the most absurd array of buffs from all these tower seats, all the technology tree stuffs, and the sheer quantity of money you could potentially make off of the convoys and the factories and the outposts. Chaos Dwarfs seem like they'd be really, really... Ooh, yeah, Grimgor may actually be more afraid here.
Not the best of ideas.
Armor of Contempt, an army ability. Okay, and it is a 26-second buff that massively increases defensive capability and provides immune to psychology. Those who think immune to psychology isn't good, keep in mind that immune to psychology makes you immune to fear and terror. Fear is a reduction of 8 leadership. Terror is a reduction of 8 leadership and makes you automatically rout once you hit 13 leadership, which in effect means it's -21 leadership. So if you're going up against a unit that has terror, then immune to psychology means that you get +21 leadership for all intents and purposes, balance-wise. So it's strong. Armaments +25 per turn. That also seems nice.
I'm a little miffed, but we'll park our bum on the blacksmith seat for now. Extra ornaments is nothing to sniff at, and by any means seats aren't permanent. We'll have another shot eventually. Or we'll build an economy so vast every seat is dwarfed beneath our all-encompassing buttocks.
Okay, so this also seems like something that unless the other Chaos Dwarf factions get 3 AI cheat bonuses, or the other Chaos Dwarf AIs are really strong and eat a lot of the map, unless either of those 2 things occur, this seems like the kind of situation where the player is going to run away with the Conclave seat. Because the Conclave influence you get from building towers. And the AI may not expand fast enough to support that kind of output that the player can. Also, the AI is not known for managing their economy very well. It occurs to me now, though, if you can build mines, if you can still build factories and outposts in major settlements, Does that mean that those factories and outposts can be upgraded to tier 5 instead of tier 3? Can you have absolutely massive factories, absolutely massive outposts that just tune out loads of resources or loads of armaments while also consuming loads of labor? Interesting.
Ah, politics. Unfortunately, we're not quite
This is just straight up the Cathayan trade caravan. I'm not complaining.
secure enough in our economy to easily swallow the cost of...
Back just a... What are these stats?
Unfortunately, we're not quite secure enough...
Okay, so the Melee Lord, the Chaos Dwarf Scat. Okay, so this might be a Lord or Hero. Maybe they... This is almost certainly, though, the Melee Lord reused. The same way that Cathay, the Caravan Masters, are also conveniently the Lord Magistrates. So, is it the Infernal Castellans that have the pistol and axe combo? Interesting. These look like standard Dwarf Lord stats to me. I'm not an expert, so I could be wrong. It does seem like they're faster at 32 speed. I don't want to say Dwarf Lords that fast.
in our economy to easily swallow the cost of sending a convoy out just yet. Not whilst we're waging 2 wars, anyway. You know what?
It would be interesting if the convoys are massively expensive. Because with Cathay, it does feel like with the trade caravans, you should just always be sending out a trade caravan because they're just they just make money. The mechanic to the Cathayan caravans is not whether or not it's a good time to send out a caravan, though there are some times where the Darklands or the Mountains of Morn have been overrun by some kind of enemy that you don't like. Grimgore, usually. But when you actually, even then, it feels like you should just send out weak level 1 caravans carrying some cargo just to make some money. With the Chaos Dwarfs, if it is a huge investment to get a convoy running that could seriously hurt your economy, if you mistime it, that would actually be really interesting.
Convoy will have to wait back to squashing rats.
Go back and just... see, that looks like a solid garrison, right? Yeah, Conclave influence gain per turn goes up with tower levels. Okay. Wait. When technology Conclave dominance researched, boosts it by a further 2 per turn. Hey. Probably nothing there anyways. What is this? Through our see it, slay it, sordid internal security campaign, it has become apparent that a radical malcontent within the ranks of the Infernal Guard has been squirreling away weapons for some nefarious purpose. Perhaps he seeks, in vain of course, to challenge the natural order. As you might expect, a fitting, agonizing, and public example has been made of the would-be. But this has slowed down our recruiting plans somewhat, though a true servant of Hashut would have nothing to fear. Okay.
I enjoyed that. There's something cathartic about watching Skaven run for their lives. Right then. The High Pass is now our industrial district. We're not accepting labour here.
Skaven are cool, don't get me wrong, but I'm sick of fighting them.
Instead, funneling it all into our mining district, which we've now converted into entirely outposts. I've opted not to build a tower in Karagvlag. I'll use them more on my frontiers to hold our borders firm, much like our capital's been doing with the ogres, which is good because they're not friendly. Thanks to the Tower of Zar and our Master of the Conclave talent, we're making diplomatic headway with our fellow Chaos Dwarfs. And we may need to call in some military favours soon if the Saberskins don't calm down. Anyway, right now we've got greener fish to fry. The World's Edge Mountains is home to the Red Eye clan. More greenskins. And they're none too thrilled that we kicked their vampire friends out of the Silver Pinnacle. They're gonna be less than thrilled when we make them homeless. Positively upset when we put them to the mines. Whilst Astragoth psychs himself up for more wholesome violence, we'll have our second army begin the recruitment drive for a pair of great Tauruses. Taurusi? Alright, let's do this. Gearing up for one big old war. Bring it on, orcs.
Poor guys.
Oh, okay.
I
There we
saw
go
her.
then. 20 odd turns in and we've managed to claw ourselves into a somewhat steady footing. The saber-skin ogres are still causing us a little grief, so we'll likely put them down next. But by adding the World's Edge Mountains to our growing territories, we've opened ourselves up to attacks from Kislevites and our inferior mountain-dwelling cousins. Indeed, the journey ahead is perilous, and Astragoth's gonna need a leg up if he... Oh! I just mean you could use a hand. Ah! I'm sorry. Look, what I'm trying to say is we've got a new epic quest with some stellar rewards up for grabs. The influence alone will set us forward, but the Black Hammer of Hushat is a must for any would-be master of the Conclave.
I just don't play
Thank you,
quest
Berendir,
battles.
for keeping our flying
I
cows
know I'm
warm.
missing out.
We'll put them to good use, worry not. Okay, here's the deal. We've got a derailed train and a very important payload to deliver. Our task, ensure the payload arrives at the victory point unscathed. Grabby goblins and opportunist orcs will use this narrow valley to their advantage, meaning we must be
Cool map.
vigilant. That's right, kids. It's an escort quest.
That's. Maybe you
We've
should
got a
take your
replacement
units off
train
the
up and running,
railroad.
and I'd wager good money we'll see our first combat on one of these two ridges, or both. For good measure, we'll split our forces into two crack teams with Astragoth heading one and Nathalie the other. Ooh, there they are. We'll set our great Taurus on their archers and take the rest head on.
Okay, seeing that train does make me wonder if they have put in where you can have artillery units drawn by the train. Now, maybe that's just a special thing just for this quest battle, though.
As first waves go, it's immensely survivable. Bit of flanking, bit of magic, bit of vigorous stabbing, and they're running for the hills. As Astragoth's team continues to the next ramp, on the other side of the valley, Nathalie's got a big old spider to squash. Rather them than me. It's a tougher crowd than Team A faced, but nothing Nathalie can't handle. Meanwhile, more greenskins are pouring into the valley, and Astragoth's keen to meet them.
Nothing to really talk about here. I know it's just me being silent. I just don't have anything to say.
Good job, Nathalie. We'll take Team B to the next ramp whilst Team
Yeah,
A
to
wraps
Ragnarok.
up the stragglers.
That's just spiders, though.
Oh, I think.
But I am a Spider fan of Spider-Man.
Unit. Look at it go, so beautiful, so graceful, so.
See
new.
how much I'm struggling to say something here? Train is moving at a surprising pace.
Oh right, not too far from our destination now, and the payload's yet to be scratched. Whatever comes next weekend. Oh, the bars are coming in. I should shut up. Enjoy the film.
Yeah, it's just cinematic time. Okay. I respect that goblin. That's a goblin with some chutzpah. Okay, we've bookended it. Okay, we come back around to a cinematic of them fighting some chaos. Black Orc. And we get here A rogue idol. I'll assume you don't fight the rogue idol in that quest battle. I like whoever had to animate a Chaos Dwarf warrior being scared of it. That's one lucky goblin. How's the vortex that comes out of the Lore of Hashut's magic missile? How does it? Wow. Yeah, I'm going to assume that Astragoth can't get that much air off a regular jump in game. But the Lore of Hashut's magic missile that gets spat out and creates a vortex. How does it behave if it hits a big monster and doesn't hit the ground? Does it just pass through them? Okay. So yeah, that's the Chaos Dwarfs look like they have a really fun, very rewarding gameplay cycle. They also look like there's a serious potential for them to be overpowered. I hate to ever, like, say, make balance statements ahead of something's actual release before I can get my hands on it, but it seems like there's some serious potential there for some crazy snowballing into the late game. Which is fun when you're playing as them, but it could be a problem if you're playing against them and they still get a lot of the same benefits. So, either which way, though, that they look very awesome from the campaign perspective. I love the tower outpost factory split. That is really cool. That is going to be really fun to try and build an economy around. All the different resources, the different settlements they can build. The Chaos Dwarfs look like they're a much more advanced economy that have potential to be really rewarding, but take a lot of work to understand as well. Which could be really cool, because there aren't a lot of races in Warhammer and Total Warhammer that work like that. Now, I always particularly make fun of the Empire, because the Empire just builds their factories to make 300 gold a turn, and they build in the roads for plus 5%. Which, Fire players, if you enjoy that, then more power to you. I'm just not a fan of it. I like a more involved economy. This all looks very awesome. And the roster looks like it could be potentially really strong because the Chaos Dwarfs get access to so many different options. And it looks like they get a lot of the options really early, though it seems they mitigate that with a unit cap. We'll see how effective that is. Could be, because it looks fairly brutal, especially if you're running a Chaos Dwarf campaign where you're not actually getting that many settlements. I'm surprised the Chaos Dwarfs look like they really stand to benefit from building a expansive empire and going beyond the Darklands and starting to eat into the World's Edge Mountains and the Mountains of Horn, the Chaos Waste, and for Dre's Oath, for instance, the options for expansion will probably be a bit different. But I really was not expecting the Chaos Dwarfs to be built so much around building a wide empire. I was kind of expecting the Chaos Dwarfs to have a very tall playstyle. They may yet be capable of that. We'll see when we get our hands on them. But they look like they very much want to have this massive empire. Surprise, because on the tabletop, part of the Chaos Dwarfs' whole thing is they're not super interested in lands outside of the Darklands, at least in the present day, though it's implied at a couple points they may be curious about one day building a larger empire. But in the lore, the Chaos Dwarfs have mostly just hung out in really just the southern and eastern ends of the Darklands, and not really messed around outside of that. So that's going to be interesting to see in execution. April 13th is going to be a good time. And I suppose I don't really have a whole lot more to say. If I do have anything more to say, then evidently I'm going to have plenty of time to say it. Because they're probably going to release more videos like this. One for Dre's Oath and one for Zatan. I'm going to have to get used to remembering Zatan's name. I kind of wasn't expecting to see him, so it kind of caught me off guard. I'm probably going to have more time to say stuff about them, say what I want to say around then. Because odds are, this time next week, we're going to be seeing either the Dre's Oath or Zatan gameplay showcase. And that could all be very interesting. They didn't talk about Astragoth's unique campaign bonuses, though. That was interesting. I was kind of expecting more of that, though I guess he probably gets a bonus to Conclave influence, doesn't he? Because that's his whole thing in the lore. Compared to Drazoth, who's been pushed out, and Zatan, who's just a regular, overseer and not a sorcerer himself. He works for us. Whereas Astragoth is the oldest Chaos Dwarf sorcerer prophet and has most influence. So, either which way, I will see you folks later. Hope you enjoyed the video. Later.